Let's have a look on the components of cloud RFP. So these are some components which are basically uh, inside the RFP. Means if one is going to write an RFP, then you need to just undergo all these headings and then think about the company in the company perspective, and get the details on these headings and prepare the RFP. So to write the RFP, the basic understanding of the purpose and all the components of RFP is mandatory to understand. So RFP is basically consisting of number of component as you see on the screen, which may vary based on the organizational preferences or based on the other requirements, but these are some very important headings that need to be taken care before any RFP can be prepared. Their ordering may be changed based on the nature of the business, but in general all these points are generally covered in every RFP. So the very first thing is purpose and goal. So this section is basically used to explain the purpose behind the RFP, and also it covers the goals of the project associated with the RFP. Then the second component is a background narrative. This section is basically used to explain any background information that may be relevant to the organization responding to the RFP. Then financial, this is also important component, and this section covers the financial matters such as the funding available for the contract, along with this any restrictions on the use of this funding, and uh, information on the financials required in the RFP response, and all other financial matters that may be associated with this RFP or the company is to be covered inside the RFP. Then entity eligibility. Now this is also very important point in the RFP that actually tells the bidder that about the eligibility to respond to the RFP. Uh, the eligibility may be that it may require kind of certification, some kind of expertise, some kind of licensing. So based on this eligibility, only the corresponding bidders can apply as a response for this RFP. Then we have a scope of work. Scope of work basically, so we can say that this section describes in detail what exactly you are requesting from the interested parties in the proposal response to the RFP. So RFP is being proposed by the company and they will be getting as a response. So what exactly they are expecting as a response, as a proposal response, is being mentioned in the scope of work. Then the reporting requirement. So this section is typically used to specify any reporting that the interested vendor must conduct and submit to the entity that created the RFP. This might be any financial report, maybe a progress report, or very likely in the case of cloud computing, the service level reports. So all these kind of reporting requirements also mentioned in the RFP. Then proposal content requirement. This is also one of the important component. So this section will be very detailed and must specify all of the items that must be provided by the vendor as a response of the RFP. It might specify the formatting of the response section that must be included and any other additional requirement that are not specified elsewhere. So this is the kind of thing which you are expecting from the bidders, from the submitters, and that how they are going to submit this request. Then the proposal selection evaluation criteria you need to mention. So what is the criteria of evaluation? So this section basically specify the evaluation and the selection criteria which is used to select the vendor, means all the proposals. So this may include Like, what is your primary thing you are looking for? You are mainly concerned with the technical expertise, or you are looking for the cost consideration. So you need to specify what is your priority. Though the company is looking for all the things, but among all the things like technical, managerial, cost, which is your main priority, and what thing you are mainly concerned with, you need to specify here. So when the vendors submit the proposal, they will be focusing their expertise, and they will put more emphasis on on that particular requirement, which actually becomes a selection criteria or the evaluation criteria. Then next is the timelines and deadlines. So this basically specify, as the name as the title suggests, the timeline for the RFP process, which basically tells that what is the timeline given to submit this response against this RFP, and how much time frame you will be means the provider will take to do this job. Okay, so this is again very important, because and the timeline is always important for any business, because the times means money. So the company are also very much peculiar, or have a serious concern about the timelines. Then notification process, you need to specify here, means the RFP must include in this section the notification processes, like informing about the result to the bidders, and they will be informing if any other information is required, then they will be informing within this period. So what kind of communication which is required in this entire process, and what are the dates for this communication is mentioned in this notification process. Then negotiation process, this basically describe how contract negotiation between the parties will take place. So these are some important kind of components which must be inside the RFP. Then appeal process is also considered an important component of the RFP. So this section basically describes the appeal process for the contract award decision. So if any of the organization is submitting a proposal and the proposal is not awarded, and then they have the rights to ask about the lacking, that where they lacked for not getting their project selected, why the proposal is not selected. So this is basically more relevant in the public sector organization, and because this is required, because government does not want any public institute to do any kind of favorism to any particular company, and also it may not involve any kind of corruption. So it is mainly closely monitored in the public RFP process, but in the private sector organization, this does not make much sense, because every company is free to give the job or make the contract with any of the providers they want. They are not actually answerable to any of the bidders, any of the proposal, that why their proposal has not been selected. Then the next is conflict of interest disclosure. Now this section outlines basically any conflict of interest disclosure that may be there or possible. This is again basically used in the public sector organization, and it usually specifies what disclosures the owners of a bidder must make. Then the last component is again, it is the last, but is also again important and to be included in every RFP. This is appendices. So this section is for any additional information that is not covered elsewhere, that need to be incorporated into the RFP. So all these components are actually equally important and to be there inside the RFP, though it depends that who is the proposer and which industry they deal with. So they may be categorized that which of the component is more important and they give more emphasis. But as a whole, all the components have to be there in the RFP. So to write an RFP, a very good and fundamental understanding of the purpose and the component of RFP is required. So this is all in this lecture. So I hope you have understood what exactly is what are the issues of migration, and when any organization wants to migrate to the cloud, then they have to look for the cloud provider, and it is not the straightforward that they simply choose any cloud provider and migrate to that provider, but it's a very complex and a systematic process where they can first identify their requirement and they will prepare the RFP. So preparing an RFP itself is a is a complex task. It's a big task for any company, and it requires a very good understanding of the requirement of the business, and it requires different phases where all the stakeholders and all the technical person, the higher administration will sit and identify the requirement, and once all the requirement have been identified, they will be documenting it in a form of RFP, which is to be published, and then the bidders are claiming against this RFP and submitting the proposal, and then the entire review process has to be undergone. So this is one of the very important thing which is required at the migration process. So this is all for this lecture. Thank you very much.